Hello, good evening and welcome to UPfront. Today, we take you to the person who has done a lot for Ghana in very varied capacities. Indeed, right from the beginning of this country's, what they call it, independence, he was there. He's been there up to this particular time, and he's been chairperson of the Electoral Commission. He's been on the Supreme Court. He's actually lived varied lives, but now he's one of the few you cannot retire until he chooses to retire. I'll be back to tell you about my guest and talk about what's going to be happening today on our front. You're welcome back. My guest today is Professor Vincent Cyril Richard Arthur Charles Crab. You may want to call him VCRC Crab, not Sam Azu Crab, as many have actually misconstrued him to be, but he'll be telling us about what's important in this country. Let's start off with a conversation on just Friday, the 30th of June, 35 years back on that same day, three High Court judges were killed. These judges were pursuing their normal duties at the time of a military government. There was a memorial held on that particular day. We'll start a conversation from this particular note. We talk about just the fact that the next day was a Republic Day for us in this republic. Anyway, you're welcome, sir.
Thank you.
I hope you're doing well today.
I'm fine.
The last time I spoke to you, you were 93. I'm just wondering, so how old are you now?
Well, I'm getting to 94.
Oh, okay, you're almost 94 now. That's interesting to know. How do you get to live this long and be this active and still very much functioning the way young people function in this republic?
I think one should start by giving thanks to God. I think it's by the grace of God that I'm alive, but I have the strength and the courage to do what I'm doing. I think I have to give him. Probably secondly, I would say that I have taken a restricted diet very early in my life. As a child, I never liked meat.
Okay. And
down the line, I gave up fish, eggs. Until today, the only food I take, vegetables.
So how long have you been doing this?
Practically all my life. Because as I said, as a child, I never liked meat.
Okay.
But down the line, I keep on dropping some of the things my system just did not like. It's got nothing to do with religion. No, it's got nothing to do with health. I just drop the things I do not like. And it's been like that. I've never drank beer in my life.
Okay.
I never drank whiskey in my life. Except I remember when I suffered from measles and I had to take some spirit on my skin to clean the measles. But that's about it.
So the criteria is simple. At what age did you drop the meat, fish, eggs, and all of
From childhood, I didn't like meat.
But
if I remember rightly, I went off fish in the 50s.
Okay.
And I went off eggs when I was in Uganda.
Okay.
And that's about the 60s. And since then, complete.
Interesting how your diet, so you're a vegetarian?
Strictly.
Okay. And besides being a vegetarian, you do not consume any alcoholic beverage?
No.
Wow. Anyway, I hope many can follow that particular restricted diet arrangement and get better. But I was just talking about what happened last Friday. There was a memorial service held. Where were you on June 30, 1982?
I was actually outside the country. I was in Uganda. I was in Nairobi doing some work for the Commonwealth Secretariat.
I see.
I think I had a cable from London that I should be in Nairobi before the 30th June. I left this country on the 28th May 1982. And I came back. In 1988, I came back to do something briefly for about a week or two. Then I went back, but I finally came back on 10th January 1999. So practically I had been away for about some 17 years out of the country.
That's interesting. But at some point in time, the judges were killed. There were several attempts to remedy the situation. Then finally, the nation settled on the National Reconciliation Exercise somewhere in 2003, 2004. You played a role in the implementation of the Reconciliation Commission's report. Exactly what was this role?
Actually, there were three of us. Mr. Joe Gatti, who was the Attorney General, Mr. Kwame Osei-Prempeh, the Deputy Attorney General, and myself, which formed the committee for the implementation of the recommendations of the National Reconciliation Commission. But in the nature of things, my two bosses were very busy. So I carried on the day-to-day work of seeing to the distribution of monies which had to be given to the victims. But I was in constant touch with both the Attorney General and the Deputy Attorney General.
So how was it like? You have to travel to various parts of the country?
We went to as many places as possible, mainly the principal areas. We were in Kumasi. We had two sections. Some of them went to the central and western regions. Then I covered Accra, Kumasi, Koforidua, Tamale.
I've seen the schedule of recommendations that was given by the National Reconciliation Commission. Did you pay everybody what was due them?
Yes, as recommended by the commission.
Did everybody turn up to get the money?
I haven't got the records now. But as far as I remember, after we've settled everything, nobody came back. So I believe that a good many of the people to whom something was due was paid. Because there was a lot of publicity about the payment of the compensation.
Did some reject the money?
I remember one incident in Kumasi when a lady was rather annoyed with the pittance, as she called it, of the money which was given to her, and she threw it down. I was given the information, so I called her, and she came. And I explained to her that you cannot give everybody the money which the person thinks he should have. After all, how do you make compensation for the people who are dead? You can't quantify that in money. But what we were doing was a recognition of the fact that some wrong had been done, and the government was paying compensation. Not the amount you have lost, but something with which you can start life.
Were people impressed with these amounts you're giving them?
I wouldn't say all of them were impressed, but some of them were more than impressed.
Did you get the impression that there was some form of restoration done with these amounts you give them?
Oh yes, I remember in, I think it's Bolga, in Bolgatanga.
Okay. We
gave, I think, about 1 million cedis to a certain woman, and she was mystified.
$1 million old Ghana cedis?
Yes.
Okay.
She was mystified, and she stood there with the money in her hands, looking at the money like that. Then I called the Chief State Attorney to explain the situation to her. And we got to realize that the money given her was money she's never seen before.
Okay.
So we arranged with the bank, and the money was paid into bank.
Okay.
What happened afterwards, I do not think I take any notice about that.
There's a question, though, about having to give people money, we're told some also get counseling services. When you heard these people and their stories told, when you met them face to face, did that send any signal to you about the kind of damage that has been done to them?
Oh, some of them were grateful for the recognition. You see, that's the important aspect of it. the recognition that something wrong had happened and somebody is taking some form, and I'm going to emphasize the word form, some form of recognition of what had been done. I think people were on the whole appreciative that something was being done. The fact that the state recognizes that some wrong had been done, I think was enough for some of the people concerned.
Okay, but there's this understanding that people also put with that. I mean, to many people, they would have rather seen the perpetrators of this crime, those who perpetrated the crime, in jail rather than they being compensated, regardless of the form.
That's vengeance. And I don't think the average person was out for vengeance. If you remember, during the course of the sittings of the commission, there were situations where people embraced each other, and that gave notice.
Okay.
That showed the spirit of the times, that really we're having a situation in which people are reconciling themselves to the sad situation that they had gone through.
Okay.
It was all on television. Somebody would be maltreated, meeting the person who had maltreated him, and then embraced him. Some of these things were on television.
They had also said that maybe perhaps all of this has been done in a way that makes us truly reconciled as a people. Are we truly reconciled as people?
The word truly to me would be a very big word, because you're dealing in the realm of human feelings. You're dealing with the realms of emotion, and it's very difficult to judge people on the basis of feeling and on the basis of emotion.
Do you get the impression?
But the impression one gets is that on the whole, there was satisfaction. The fact, and I'm going to repeat this, the fact that something was being done to show people generally that some wrong had been done and steps are being taken for reconciliation. I think that the majority of the people reconcile themselves to that fact.
Let me get to a broader perspective on this one, because something that, I mean, people who came forward were not the only people who were victims or probably suffered injustice one way or the other during the long period that we're talking about. Do you think the nation Ghana is reconciled in a way that can actually make us feel we are a nation state? We are together as one?
That's a very big question. How far we consider ourselves to be a nation. I haven't done an empirical study about the situation, and therefore I'll be very cautious in answering that question. But talking to people of what happened, I think we have reconciled ourselves to certain situations. How far that has been translated into the activities, the everyday activities of people, I'm not in a position to judge. But because of my experience in other parts of the world, we haven't taken cudgels against each other in this country. And I think we have to be thankful to God that that is not happening.
Are there less obvious passive forms like mob justice?
No, I don't think mob justice has anything to do with it. No, I don't think so. Again, I don't have the empirical information, but I don't think mob justice has anything to do with the reconciliation exercise. So, it may have something to do with people's perception of perhaps how laws are implemented in this country. People may not be satisfied that if I report, for example, to the police, I'll get justice. But I wouldn't consider this to be on a national scale. We in this country have no idea, and I'm going to repeat, we in this country have no idea of what has gone on in other parts of the world because of what happened in this country. We know of what happened in Rwanda.
Yeah.
We know of what is still happening in the Congo. It hasn't happened here yet. So again, we have to be thankful to God that we in this country probably consider things on a different level and do not take cordials against each other. But
in this particular case, and many of us will caution that the kind of partisan arrangement we have in this country, the sometimes bitter partisanship that we express, is another form.
Vengeance is different from passion. Passion may be an aspect of vengeance, but vengeance starts from an anger and uses passion to achieve what vengeance wants to. And I don't think in this country we have that spirit, or at least we haven't manifested that spirit of being vengeful. But so the mob justice, to me, arises out of a completely different situation, which I have not been able to analyze.
We'll be talking about the legal system in the country. We would actually be going into how people feel that system is not delivering the kind of goals that it's supposed to. But before we actually end this section of the conversation,
now,
very briefly on that one. Yes, I wanted to. I'll make this point briefly before.
Well, let me deal with it because you've raised.
No, because I'll ask you the question later on. I just wanted to know that that's an issue that we will actually touch on. But briefly on this particular note, for example, I've spoken to some children of the murder justices in 1982 who are of the opinion that they have not been truly reconciled. In fact, we've not gotten to the bottom of the matter in their own eyes. Is this something that you agree?
If I had been there, I would have asked the question, to what extent have you not been reconciled?
To say that, for example, there were names mentioned in the SIB's reports, which up to today...
SIB report?
Yes, which up to today were not prosecuted. People who have not been given the opportunity to state whether indeed they were directly involved in these matters.
Have they gone forth to give the requisite information or whatever information they have which could lead to the prosecution of the people you're talking about? Or they're just talking out of the air and saying people have not been prosecuted? You can't go to court to prosecute when there is no evidence. You can't go to court to prosecute when there is nobody to stand in the witness box to give evidence.
I agree that it can't be justice when people feel that. I hear
people talk about justice being done. The court system, and not only in this country, but all over the world, requires that if somebody has done wrong, there must be people who will have to give evidence of what has happened. You know, courts in any country in the world are passive institutions.
Okay.
Let me finish.
Okay.
They are passive institutions. If cases don't come before courts, courts can't do anything. So you can't blame the judicial system for being responsible for what is happening. There is another aspect of it, the aspect in which you, and I don't mean you in person, but I mean the Ghanaian person as a you. He knows that some wrong has been done. But to go and give evidence, he won't. And if he doesn't, how is the system going to work? So it's all right for you or for some of them to talk about, oh, the legal system this and the legal system that. The institutions are there, but they have to be activated.
We'll come back to this particular conversation, but I had introductory remarks from my guest, Professor V.C. R.A.C. Crab, distinguished statesman. We'll be back, we'll continue the conversation. This is the UPfront, and today we are having one man who's of very distinguished history. He's been a Supreme Court judge, he's been chairperson of the Electoral Commission. In fact, he set up the Electoral Commission and he's played various roles in our nation. In fact, not recent ago, he was also the Statute Review Commission's sole commissioner. And we'll be talking more about this and many other things he's done in his life. Now, there is a lot of talk about Ghana's legal system not delivering development. Some say a legal system that catches the petty foul thief and lets go the big man who's engaged in big time, big money corruption. It's not a legal system that is fair to all. We'll be exploring that option with Justice Crab. And you're coming, Justice Crab.
Thank you.
Justice, that comment keeps coming up consistently over the period, that regardless of how you see a system, if a big man politician gets to go free or gets a slap on the back with a few weeks or months in jail, and the foul thief gets years in jail, that system certainly is not fair and cannot ensure development. Do you agree?
It's not a question of whether I agree or I do not agree. It's a question of how a particular system works. The small man, the big man. How do we define the small man and how do we define the big man? But I still come back to the basic issue that you cannot prosecute successfully if you do not have sufficient evidence to prosecute. Perhaps if the big man does something, it's not easy to get the evidence. If the small man does something, it's easy to get the evidence.
But it's not the failure of our legal system.
It's not the failure of the legal system, it's the failure of the human beings who are in the system. And that's what I want to emphasize.
Okay.
You see, we often forget that institutions are run by human beings. Institutions by itself cannot do anything. Again, I'll give you the example. If a little man goes to steal a fowl, probably the little man's whose fowl was stolen is going to be vigilant and therefore goes to the police, does everything. If the big man steals a fowl, would you, as a citizen of this country, be vigilant to see that the big man is prosecuted? Would you? That's the difference.
But is there more to the state structures that are supposed to ensure that we gather evidence and we do what we can, and that the strong arm of the state descends heavily on the people with the resources to actually escape wrongdoing, rather than chasing the poorly resourced, perhaps stealing for survival kind of person?
Stealing is wrong, whoever does it, whether the big man or the small man. And I repeat, it's a question of people coming forward with evidence against the big man, as well as coming with evidence against the small man. Perhaps you would say that in our system, it is easy to get evidence against the little man than it is to get evidence against the big man.
And how do you rectify
And that is
system?
where the problem is. But you have to appreciate that because we are human beings, no human system is perfect. And because human beings are not perfect, the systems which we put in place are themselves not perfect. But by and large, having been a prosecutor myself, because I've been Crown Counsel, I have prosecuted what you call big men.
Interesting.
And I have prosecuted what you call small men. And I know of the case, for example, of a Dr. Jan from, I think, Brong Ahafo region, who had to go in court accused of murder. Eventually, I believe he pleaded to manslaughter. I think, yes, he was a lawyer too, with a PhD degree. So this concept of, catching the big man, not catching the big man, but catching the small man, I have problems with that. But still, I have to emphasize, because we have people listening to us, the system will work when we, the citizens of this country, are willing to give the requisite evidence when these issues arise. We have a responsibility as citizens of this country to do that.
You have reviewed statute law for a very long time. Are you done with that work?
Yes, I've dealt with the substantive law. I have done work on the subsidiary legislation, and it's with the printers. I'm waiting for the proofs.
I want us to actually pick a few things from that. When you did that job, and also mindful of your long-term legal education, legal competence, and your appreciation of Ghanaian law, what is the problem with Ghana's legal system?
It's difficult to say this is a problem with the legal system,
So there isn't a
or
single
that
issue
is a
that runs through
problem
all.
with the legal system. No, it doesn't brush me off. A system as a system can only work and work very well if the human beings who operate the system do what the system demands. And that's the point I'm trying to make. We often condemn a system when we should be condemning the human beings who operate the system.
Are we that bad as a people?
We are not bad as a people because you can't take the whole of about 25 million people because of the failure of about 1,000 of them and see everybody is bad. I wouldn't accept that.
I get your point. But Dr. Raymond Atukuba said some time ago that a bad law is the law that does not have proper procedures for implementation. To the extent that when people complain that there's a lack of implementation of a law, then the law itself is bad.
The law itself may not be bad, and I'll keep on repeating this, is the implementation of the law. Let me give you a very simple example. I believe you have a big pen. B-I-C,
Yeah.
big pen. It's a writing instrument, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
And we write with it. If I use it in destroying your eye, what is it?
It's a murder weapon or some
Thank you.
dangerous weapon.
That's the point I'm making.
I
That's
get,
the point
I get your point. And I mean, so how then do we get the people who are first entrusted with the responsibility to implement these laws and those who are also entrusted with the responsibility to ensure that they obey the laws to do their work?
Thank you very much. So our discussion should center on the quality of the people whom we put in places to implement the law, not the law.
In this case,
You
you're talking about
the law can be draconian. The law can be good for the people. But again, let me give you another example. The Constitution places an obligation on the Auditor General to surcharge a person whom the Auditor General recognizes that he has not properly accounted for monies. I've never heard of a situation in which the Auditor General has surcharged anybody. It's in the Constitution.
They said they will do it now. I mean,
He
before
will do
people
it
went to court.
now.
Yes.
The Constitution came into force 1st January 1993.
Yes, some people
So why
went to
hasn't
court
he
to
done
compel.
it? That's the point I'm making. That if the law is there and the human beings who have to operate the law do not operate the law, you can't say the law is bad.
They said we're constrained, and if you put constraint in the ways of people who are supposed to implement a law,
What constraint?
that they
If
were.
you go and charge, you do the accounts, and you find somebody has misused it, and you have to surcharge that person, what is the constraint? I don't see any constraint. Then you are saying that you don't audit the accounts. That's what you're saying.
Would the solution be to fighting big crime and big corruption?
Leave big crime. Here I'm giving you one particular example.
Yeah.
The Auditor General has the power to surcharge. Has he been surcharging? You say he says he's going to do it now.
Yeah.
Why was he not doing it? That's the point I'm making. That you see, the law can be there. It's how we implement the law And that's the problem we are facing in this country.
Okay, I get your
I
point.
think we ought to face it squarely, that if you have a responsibility to discharge, don't look at the other person. Do your duty where you are. Ghana can only progress if you and I, in our respective ways, do what the law requires us to be done. And that's what there is to it.
Would the Office of a Special Prosecutor, being currently set up and going to be backed by law, be the trick?
I understand that there's going to be legislation.
Yeah.
I don't know the details, and I think it would be wrong for me to comment on it.
But other countries like the Ombudsman, people also have different positions.
Our Ombudsman is what we call Shiraj.
Oh, okay.
When we did the 1969 Constitution, I believe we used the word Ombudsman. Now you call it Shiraj. It's the same thing. You've changed names. But the essence of what they're supposed to do is the same.
But if you are told that the Attorney General's department, because of the political appointments involved, may not be able to prosecute the people who are in the party, who are in government, and the corruption that is being done by government officials, so you need somebody who independently prosecutes these issues. Is that a solution?
I'm glad you used the word if. If is conditional. If, let's leave the is and come to the reality.
The reality in this case is that...
The reality is the human being who is going to be appointed. Whether he's appointed by Mr. A or Mr. B, to me, does not make a difference. It is the integrity of the person who is appointed that makes the difference, not who appoints him. You went to school. Your parents paid your school fees. Did your parents learn for you?
No.
No, you learned for yourself. To the extent that you learned well, you did well at school. To me, it's as simple as that. We often say, oh, because it's appointed by the president, therefore what? Therefore, he can't do he ceases to be the person God made him to be. That's the argument we are making.
But you understand that, I mean, what you're saying is quite idealistic.
It's not idealistic.
Because there are pressures that comes from the political appointee to suit a political party's needs.
If you are appointed to do a work and there's pressure, and you say, thank you very much, take your job, I'm going back, what happens? Then,
so everybody will resign?
If you feel that there's pressure on you to do what your conscience tells you you shouldn't do, why should you give in to it? Then of what use are you as a human being?
I'm just
why
trying
did God give you conscience?
I'm just trying to recall in my own mind how many people in this republic have done that.
Didn't Amidu do it?
Yeah. I mean,
I'm giving you one example.
One example.
And I'm quite sure there may be many. But because it hasn't come into the limelight.
But the evidence suggests that if we were to be many, we would have seen
them.
Really,
where we often say, oh, if the evidence, where is the evidence? I don't see any evidence. I don't see any.
The evidence in this case is that...
It's a perception to me which people have. I think it's a perception that, oh, because somebody is appointed by such and such a person, therefore there's going to be pressure on him. Let's, for purposes of argument, say that the special prosecutor or whoever is going to be appointed is not appointed by the president. Let's say, for purposes of argument, is appointed by the Bishop of Accra, for purposes of argument. Okay. If he's doing his work and you are involved, and you go to him, and he takes money so that you don't prosecute him, has the situation changed?
No.
No, thank you very much. So, it's the integrity of the person who is appointed that makes the difference, not who appoints him.
Okay, let me ask you a very tough question in this case. Who do you think should be appointed to the office?
Who should I be appointed?
Who do you think should be appointed to the office?
We have a constitution, and the constitution places the responsibility on a particular human being to do so. God did not give us a constitution. We gave ourselves the Constitution.
Okay.
So we must abide by the Constitution.
So to you, beyond that, truly independent and...
What do you mean by independence? I believe, to use the word, the integrity of the person who is appointed.
Okay, so that should be the only criteria.
In the nature, I have to explain this. In the nature of things, the word independent must be used in a qualified sense.
Okay.
And let me explain what I mean. We recently had a situation where the president of this country has nominated a nice lady. I know her very well, capable. She has all the qualities of being Chief Justice.
She was in the president's chambers.
Okay. There you are. Because she was in the president's chambers, she ceases to be who she is. You've thrown away her personality as a human being, and you're putting a label on her. Therefore, if she does something, you're going to look at the label and know what she's done. And that's the problem with us, which I'm trying to correct.
Because there's been so many examples, and the status quo has been that people who are appointed by people they know end up bending over backwards for them and virtually following their whims and caprices. That is what's happening in this country. And with your experience, you would know that.
Which means that we've not been appointing the right people. That's what I'm trying to say.
Interesting.
If you appoint a man who has integrity, but let me finish that argument before we come to this, because of what we're discussing. The lady was being nominated by the president. She had to appear before Parliament. If Parliament, and I'm using your if Parliament rejects her, what is the president going to do?
It does look like the Parliament's powers of rejection.
You haven't answered my question. If, for purposes of argument, Parliament rejects that person,
the president may have to appoint a new person.
Exactly. So if you do your work well, and I do my work well, where is the problem? You haven't answered that question.
Interesting. Well, I get your point, and I get it very well. But there's a lot of talk beyond this particular issue. You in 2013 said our judicial system is robust. You trust our judges.
Yes, I say so. I say so.
You said that you trust our judges.
I say so. And I will say so. Yes, go on.
2 years down the line.
Yes.
You certainly might have been wrong when we had a judicial bribery scandal.
I wasn't wrong. How many of them? And how many judges do you have?
We have thousands of them across the country.
And how many were involved?
You surely will know about the expression, the
It
bad
was
man.
about 15 or 30.
Yes.
And don't forget, in that exercise, 3 or 4 judges, they went to their houses. What did they do? Did they take it?
No.
Why? Thank you.
That's the minority in this case.
Why? It's not the minority.
If you check the number of houses
they are the people who were approached and they did not take it. That shows you that you have judges in this country who have integrity. Let's look at that.
So you must shift your stance from...
I haven't shifted my stance. I will still stick for the judges in this country.
Even in the face of the evidence supplied.
The evidence is that some people, some judges on the bench are corrupt. It does not mean that every judge in this country is corrupt. And I want you to accept that. Does it mean that the judiciary
of this country is tainted with corruption?
You could say that there is evidence of corruption, but you cannot tell me that justice is tainted in this country. That I will never accept.
Is a blot on the conscience of the entire judiciary, don't you think
so? It's a blot on the conscience of you and I, not on the judiciary. Who are the people who go to give the bribes?
I mean, but we expect a judge properly appointed to be a man of integrity.
And I
we expect a person to reject a bribe.
And I don't expect you, as a citizen of this country, of integrity, to go and give a bribe to a judge.
Yes, I agree perfectly. I wouldn't do so.
If you agree to that, then you have to accept that you cannot say that judges are bad and then leave the people who go to give bribes. And that's what I want you to understand.
Did the immediate past Chief Justice do enough to clean this judiciary, to clear the doubts of many about the corruption in the setup?
I think the outgone, if I may use that expression, Chief Justice, had really done a lot for the judiciary in this country. You can take as her monument this magnificent building of the court complex. I visited...
That's a structure, really.
Oh, I'm coming. I visited one of the courts the other day, and the atmosphere was so wonderful. I said, I wish I were a judge now. Because, for example, at our time, we had to write everything with our hands. You follow what I mean? We had to write it. So she has done a lot for the judiciary.
On corruption.
You see, this thing of corruption, we have to look at it in its proper perspective.
You can't say she has done a lot on corruption. Can you say
well,
that?
I don't see how she can do anything on corruption.
First, start with appointing judges who are high integrity.
Listen very carefully, because people have got to be appointed as judges. There is a system which people go through to be appointed judges. But once you are in the bench, your work requires a certain amount of integrity in you. Those who are responsible for your appointment have done their bit. The rest is yours. And you cannot blame somebody that because this person appointed that person, he ought to have appointed somebody who would not be corrupt. As I'm sitting down before you now, how do I know that if somebody give you some money, you will take it? I don't know. But I have to start from the premise that you're an honest person.
Okay.
Unless you prove yourself dishonest. And that's what I'm saying. You see, you cannot blame the system.
Okay.
Don't blame the judiciary because one or two justices are corrupt. Blame those persons who are corrupt.
In fairness, it's more than
let persons
13
realize
that we're talking about in this particular case. But we'll come back and continue this conversation.
Let persons realize that they have done wrong. You leave the human beings who do wrong, and then you blame a system. And that's, I am saying, is wrong. And it's an aspect of our lives in this country which we must stop.
That must change.
We must say this is a spade, it's a spade. A has done something bad. Look at A and condemn A. Don't condemn A because of the house he comes from. That's what I'm saying. Because the result is that we are lying. What you are talking about of the big man not going, it's because you are blaming the system. You are not blaming the big man. You are blaming the system. So the big man hides behind the system. Blame the big man. Let the big man realize that he's done something wrong. Let me, as a citizen of this country, realize that I've done something wrong. Don't talk of the system. The system by itself will work when human beings.
I get your point. Thank you so much. But I have to take a break now. When I come back, we'll actually be talking more on this particular issue. So I'm with the Venerable VCRC Crab. Our conversation is coming to you live from the lecture room 4 at the Mount Crest University here. We're back to continue this conversation. Welcome back to our front, and my guest here is VCRC Crab. I mean, I actually had to say professor at some point, I had to say justice too at some point.
Anyone would do.
Former chairperson of the Electoral Commission at a point in time. So it's interesting the titles that you get to get at age 93, almost 94, and actually know so much about this republic. I'll be asking a question that, I mean, we're first talking about the judiciary, and many people will be shocked hearing that you still defend the institutional power after happening in 2015 and the...
I'm defending an institution
Yes.
not human beings.
Yes, but that institution has been bastardized with
No,
the actions of
human
people.
beings have acted against the principles of the institution.
Because
not
the institution probably allowed it be.
The institution did not allow them.
You remember at a point in time when some lawyers in this country, Raymond Atugba and Co., went ahead and said, Larry Beaming, the late NCCE boss, said that the judiciary was corrupt. They said they would not listen to them again. Indeed, after the expose, we didn't hear the judiciary come out to say that, well, there's no evidence to suggest we're corrupt.
They said the judiciary was corrupt. That's the point I'm making. You are blaming a system. If those who spoke came out and said,
some judges take bribe, that's part of the things they said.
Don't say some judges. Say Mr. A, Mr. X, Mr. B, Mr. Z is corrupt. Then we go into it. But you come and say the judiciary is corrupt. Who are you going to prosecute? Who are you going to deal with? I'm still stressing.
Is the same thinking you have about the police and other institutions? Because I have never seen anybody say that a policeman is corrupt.
All institutions in this country are operated by human beings. So, if there is something wrong, we should look at the human beings who have done wrong and deal with them. The point I'm raising is that we leave the human beings and talk of the institution.
I get your point.
There's a difference between institution and the people who man the institutions. So long as we keep on talking about the institution, then we are making the human beings to hide behind the institution.
Forgive me.
We must deal with the human beings, and then the institutions will work.
I need to ask you this question on a personal note, because actually will make the point for me. When you were a judge, when you were a chairperson of the Electoral Commission, in your varied roles in public capacity, were you ever offered a bribe?
No.
Nobody?
No.
Surprisingly?
No. I was threatened. That's the best I got.
Threatened when?
With death.
Really?
Yes.
Which period are we talking about specifically?
When I was Electoral Commission.
Oh, okay, 69.
When we were dealing with Apalu's case, I was threatened.
Oh, okay.
That's what I've got.
Okay.
That's because I believed that I was doing something which in my conscience and to my God and to my country, I was doing something which I believe was right. I have survived. And that's why I'm stressing this issue of the integrity
of the individual.
You as a citizen of Ghana, me as a citizen of Ghana.
So you were never offered a bribe because the people felt you were at high integrity?
I can't say what other people say. I can talk of what I do and what I am. I can't talk about other people.
The question that comes to mind on this particular level is that then are we approaching a fight against corruption wrong?
If we are trying to talk in terms of institutions and not with the human beings.
So, do you think that corruption is pervasive in this country?
I cannot, as I said, I do not have empirical evidence. But I would accept.
You have seen Transparency International.
I would accept that there is corruption in this country. And if there is corruption in this country, we should ask the question, why do we have corruption in this country? Where have we been able to locate corruption? How?
But that's very simple to do it. How? For example, we know that there's corruption in the judiciary through the expose that came in. We know there's corruption in the police service because consistently police officers have been engaged in corrupt acts one after the other. The most recent one being the goat scam. There's also yes, corruption.
Let's work on that.
Yes.
We know that some police officers are corrupt. And I will use the word some.
Yeah.
Because I don't believe that everybody in the police force is corrupt.
Certainly.
So some are corrupt. What are we doing to fish out the corrupt policemen? What are we doing? You are saying some. I'm saying some. Who are those some?
At least some have been arrested.
Some have been arrested.
Yes.
Good.
So you were talking about some. I'm also saying that some of the institutions are corrupt. There's corruption in the judiciary, corruption in the executive, which is pronounced according to the Transparency International's report, corruption in parliament, most recent being MPs taking money and going ahead to what they call it from institutions that are supposed to help them remedy their laws, and this is very clear. There's also corruption in virtually all state institutions.
Good. Now, let's take the one about parliament you're talking about.
Yes, 100,000 from the National Lottery Authority to draft laws to do their work.
I believe the National Lottery Authority have given an answer. I believe so. But let's take that issue. Some members of parliament are supposed to have been given money.
Yeah.
Okay. If it is established that some members have been given some money, have we asked them to return those monies?
They're justifying. They are saying that they are due the money because it is facilitation for their conference. Parliament itself says that's not the case because that's not a strategy to put in place.
If Parliament says that that is not the case, what is Parliament doing about it? It's all right for us to say, oh, members of Parliament, they've done this. Why doesn't the people who are responsible for Parliament says, we don't think it's right, pay the money back? What's wrong with it?
What they are saying is the usual phrase
you haven't answered my... You say what they are saying. I'm asking you a question. If Parliament says, and I'm using your language, if Parliament says that that is wrong, why doesn't Parliament ask them to pay back?
They say they are going to investigate first.
Good. If they investigate and it is true, will they ask them to pay back? This is what I'm driving at.
There's no evidence that they have done so in times past.
Because you see, we keep on saying, oh, this is this, this is that. But the action which ought to be taken is not taken. And so long as we are talking in terms of corruption and all this sort of thing, and the necessary action is not taken, then we will go on like that. And that's why I'm drawing your attention to the fact that we must look at the human beings who are responsible for these things and deal with the human beings and not create a situation in which the human beings hide behind what you call the system. Because the system by itself cannot do anything.
Let me ask you this question because it's important. There's rather a quandary and a dispute over whether or not Parliament should investigate this matter on its own or an independent body. And so before you make that point, the Ghana Integrity Initiative and other anti-corruption bodies are insisting, including the CDD, that so far as they've been aware, and similar probes have been done in times past, there's not yielded the right kind of results. So the best way to deal with this matter is have an independent body do the investigation. Do you support that?
You see, probably it's my nature. You say independent body. Who is that independent body? You
outside
raise the
of Parliament.
question. Outside of who is going to appoint them?
Perhaps by the executive.
The executive?
Yeah.
Meaning president?
More likely.
You see, then we are back to square one, aren't we? Because if you were arguing a little while ago that the person who appoints could put pressure on the other person. You see, you're back to square one.
So you don't support the independent
board? If it's not a question of supporting independent, it's a practical question.
What is the question in this case?
Who appoints the independent person?
But there are alternatives elsewhere. We can do the appointment by just asking professional bodies to give representation.
Who is going to ask the professional body to do it?
Certainly, even the executive can do that.
Who can do that?
The executive can do that.
The executive is president.
Yes.
Because in this country, under our constitution, executive authority
is reported to the president.
But why doesn't the organization you mentioned, or something initiative.
The Ghana Integrity Initiative.
Why don't they take it upon themselves to do the necessary investigation and publish it and give the names of the people who they think have received the money?
But they can't coerce members of parliament to attend their meetings. They do not have the power, the executive power to do some of these things. They cannot even ask them to attend their meetings and they'll come. They will willingly oblige.
Article 2 of the Constitution. They have the power.
That's up to the court to do so.
Yes, why don't they go to court and ask the court to make an order?
You welcome back to our front. My guest is Justice VCRC Crap. We rounded up on this conversation, but there are a couple of issues that we have to clear our way. You did say that you trust that this particular government and the president in particular will be able to fight corruption. Did you have the same belief in the previous government led by John Dramani Mahama?
Probably it never entered into my mind to make the comparison. Because one person
he also said
he'll
fight corruption.
Yes.
He said in 2013, in 2014,
yes,
and actually said that he had 300 prosecutions underway in his quest to fight corruption.
Now, if I accept what you said, he had 300 something
prosecutions.
So, which means he had done something in order to get that number. So, did he complete the processes? And in the nature of things, he had to leave office. You see where comparisons are odious. You see, you take one situation, you don't know the circumstances.
I'm actually asking you to state whether the former President John Dramani Mahama had the gravitas, did indeed fight corruption.
You see, we're using language. I have to deal with the person. How much do I know of him? What were the circumstances under which he lived? Did he have the cooperation of A, B, C, D? What did the police do? You follow what I mean?
That he
because he as a person, he as one person cannot fight corruption.
Did you know his plan for fighting corruption?
How?
Did you know his plan for fighting corruption?
I have no idea. So how can I judge it?
Okay, so how about President Jerry Rawlings? Did he fight corruption?
All of them. On what basis am I going to say they have failed or they have failed? If I don't have the evidence.
Whether you think they did.
It's not a question of thinking, it's a practical question. You see, that's some of the problems we face in this country. Oh, I think that. Oh, I think that. Where's the empirical evidence? I'm quite sure each president of this country has tried to do what he can for this country as he understands it. Not as I understand it, not as you understand it.
But I'm asking for you to do the evaluation of what you have done.
You see, that's the point of evaluation. You see, that's the point of evaluation. For me to evaluate what a person has done, I'm going to even go into the question of what breakfast he had. You'll be surprised. Yes.
Really?
Because if he ate well, when he goes to work, he'll work well.
That's interesting.
If he has problems in the house and he fought with his wife, when he goes to work, what do you think he's going to do? So when you come to these questions of evaluation, there are so many things you have to take into account.
Recently,
it takes a lot of things to make one human being.
I get your point. Recently, the Supreme Court ruled that it was wrong that we brought in Guantanamo Bay detainees without recourse to Parliament, and that Parliament should have 3 months to review if the arrangement is sent to them or the people be sent back. Was that a step in the right direction?
That is what the Supreme Court has said.
You've been a Supreme Court judge before.
Listen very carefully. That is what the Supreme Court has said. Whether I agree with it or not, I have to obey what the Supreme Court has said.
Yeah, but I'm not querying on the obedience.
I expect, no. You see, this is something we have to get clear.
Okay.
You see, there are two things. The Supreme Court has given a decision. Yeah. As a citizen of this country, I have to comply with it.
But I can state whether you agree with it.
No, that's number one. That's number one. Whether I agree with it is a different story. I cannot disagree with the Supreme Court. When I didn't have the pleadings before me, I don't know what was said before the Supreme Court.
I see.
On the basis of which they came to the decision which is kept.
Even on the general principle of international law application in Ghana?
Well, I don't have the facts for me to judge for myself and say, oh, on these facts, If I were there, this is what I have done. You see, again, this is part of the problem we have in this country. We judge people without evidence.
I see.
Without going into the nitty-gritty. You follow what I mean?
I get your point.
Certain facts were placed before the Supreme Court. On the basis of those facts,
they made a determination.
They make a determination. I don't have the facts. Then I'm supposed to say they are right, they are wrong. On what basis?
Okay.
As a rational human being, it would be wrong for me to do so.
Let me then find out from you. Is there growing impunity in this country?
Is there
growing impunity?
Growing impunity in this country. Another big question. I'm going to throw it back to you.
I mean, I'm not asking you the question.
No,
and this time you would answer
yes,
the question.
If your child does something wrong,
yes,
what would you do?
I would punish the child.
Thank you. That's where impunity starts. That's where impunity starts. So when you talk about growing impunity in this country, growing where? If it's growing in the family, it will grow in the country. Families constitute what you call Ghana. Come again.
I finally would ask you on this particular note a very simple question about whether or not Ghana's development and the plans that we pursue so far, the ideology, first and foremost, which ideological leaning do you subscribe to?
I don't subscribe to any ideology.
You are not socialist?
Socialist?
You are not capitalist?
What is capitalism?
You don't believe in social democracy?
What is social democracy? What is capitalism?
But these are defined ideologies. They are known all over.
All the things you mentioned.
You are afraid to be
all
actually
the things,
attached to the political parties.
All the things you are mentioning.
Political philosophy.
Deal with human beings.
Yes.
What you call political philosophy is something Rousseau said, Voltaire said.
Yeah.
Why should I, in the 21st century, be bound by what somebody said 200 years ago? And he said that within the context of the circumstances in which he was living.
But they outlived, they are refined, they get developed over the period.
Good.
The
So you should ask me, what is my development?
I didn't know you had one. So what is your political philosophy?
Political philosophy?
Yes.
I gave a speech some time ago, and I titled the speech, "The Philosophy of Man." And in that speech, I spoke about gratitude. I spoke about human nature. I spoke about cause and effect. I spoke of our limitations. That's where I stand, because the human element is what is important, not what somebody said, what people say. What I do is what is important. What you do is what is important. Socialism, what does it mean? If I work hard and get money, should you come and take it? In order to distribute wealth, you have to create wealth. How you create wealth becomes another issue. We have gold in this country. We have dam, we've got all these things. Why do we go to IMF?
Well, I actually wanted to answer directly, but I'm being given a signal that my time is up.
Well,
thank you so much,
nice
Justice.
talking to you.
Well,
I'm not sure whether I've answered all your questions, but
you answered most of them.
Very nice discussion.
I hope we'll have another opportunity
Probably
to do it
there'll be
once
another
again.
opportunity.
Yes, we will do so.
Okay.
Well, folks, that's where we end today's edition of Upfront. It's been a wonderful time. Many thanks for joining us on this one. My name is Raymond Akwa.